5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Somehow, out of this nothing, came everything.
Out of this vibrant nothingness, matter, energy, space, time, consciousness, mind emerged, came out.
How is it that something as unconscious as the matter of the brain can ever give rise to something as immaterial as an experience?
If you want to see fear in a quantum physicist's eyes, just mention the words, the measurement problem. The measurement problem is this: an atom only appears in a particular place if you measure it. In other words, an atom is spread out all over the place until a conscious observer decides to look at it. So the act of measurement or observation creates the entire universe.
Only conscious beings can be observers, then we're intimately hooked into the very existence of reality. Without us, there would just be this expanding superposition of possibilities with nothing definite ever actually happening.
Out of millions and millions of blobs of energy and light, photons and electrons, they make up this imaginary three-dimensional solid world, which doesn't exist at all according to relativity or quantum mechanics.
Anytime we attempt to look at particles beyond a certain level, the very act of observation changes things.
And in addition, the more you look at individual particles, the more you realize that there is no such thing as one electron. An electron, or any elementary particle, exists only in relationship to other things, like other particles, or the universe at large. This means that deeply enough, and you dive down into the nature of matter, everything we know about the everyday world dissolves. There are no objects anymore, there are only relationships. There's no locality anymore, there's no time anymore. The more you look at something in detail, in what we think of as solid matter, the less and less solid it begins to look.
The only realities we know are the ones our brain manufactures. Our brain receives millions of signals every minute, and we organize them into holograms, which we project outside ourselves and call reality.
Well, the brain cortex, if it is also a hologram, then it's a three-dimensional hologram. If two-dimensional holograms reconstruct three-dimensional images, then, ergo, it follows that three-dimensional holograms reconstruct four-dimensional images.
A hologram is a metaphor. It is how you take n dimensions of information and you bring them down into n-1 dimensions. It's a way of relating the paradoxes that we find in how to make a leap from this concept to that concept.
The conceptual pigeonholes we use, words, to describe reality, are phenomena inside our head. They're not out there. And most of the time this is a philosophical quibble, but when you get down to quantum physics, and this is one of the reasons that Bohm came up with the holographic idea, it starts to have real effects. And one of those is it's been discovered that if you take two subatomic particles like electrons, in certain instances, when you do something to one, it will always affect the other, no matter how far apart they are.
Well, how can this be? But what this tells us is that once matter is physically joined, even when it becomes separate, the energy is still there that's connecting it. And this is why it's important to me, because if we go back far enough in time, all the particles of matter of this entire universe that are expanding were all meshed together in a single particle about the size of a green pea, is what scientists tell us today, is what the computer models suggest. That if you could go into the universe today and take all the particles of matter and take out all the space in between and bring it together and compress it into a size of a single green pea, it means that you and me and every one of our listeners, we were all once part of that same particle that creates this whole universe today. And even though those particles are now separate and expanding, and the studies show that they are, energetically we're all still linked.
So an atom and its electron are multiversal objects. And that multiversal object is what the quantum mechanics is describing. Now, that means that the parallel universe aspect of reality as described by quantum theory must apply to objects of all sizes. Humans, stars, galaxies, everything. And that's why we call it the parallel universe theory rather than just parallel electrons theory.
Because we ourselves are made of atoms, after all.
We are, that's right. And the same theory that says that the atoms exist in more than one place in different universes says that we humans also exist in more than one place and in more than one state of mind and so forth in different universes.
And so what that means, talking about words, is that there is no separation between electrons. Furthermore, there's no separation between people.
Everything is interconnected, and the biggest secret of all, to me, is the extent to which individuality is an illusion.
Illusion comes from how our minds perceive.
My illusion comes from my mind, your illusion comes from your mind. We do not need to search
anywhere else for the source of illusion. Wherever we search externally, we cannot find the source of illusion because your illusions come from within your mind.
The big thing we're talking about here is a new way of thinking about this thing we call the person, the self, the beingness, the I. And as we begin to modify what we mean by that, we could begin to see and touch upon this infinite realm that I'm speaking about.
Infinities are part of the boundary of your existence. That is, viewed from this perspective, everything can be divided to infinity.
If you've ever wondered why nuclear power is 1,000,000 times more powerful than chemical energy, it's because chemical energy results from the manipulation of atoms in a molecule. Nuclear energy results from the manipulation of nucleons in a nucleus. The super-unified scale, 1,000, million times smaller, is virtually infinite in its dynamism.
If you're seeking the infinite, what instruments do you have to seek the infinite? Only sense organs, isn't it? So through your sense organs, if you're seeking the infinite, it is like wanting to go to moon with a bullock cart. Isn't it so? That is the plight of humanity right now. With a limited perception, they're trying to grasp that which is beyond.
So we try to perceive at the ultimate level of reality, and we search for any kind of method. For example, new technology, atomic power, etc. But search as we might, we cannot perceive the ultimate level of reality using these mechanisms. The ultimate level of reality is fundamentally empty and not observable using these scientific methods.
Science is involved in a perceptual enterprise, not primarily in gaining knowledge, though knowledge appears, but knowledge is a byproduct. And by understanding the thing, you can coherently win our contact with it as long as it is coherent. It shows that our understanding is correct. You see, we must distinguish between correct appearances and incorrect appearances are illusory.
Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self. This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Our brains take information in and sometimes give it form. It's not that the picture is out there, it's that we're getting data that we're turning into a picture according to our own belief systems and our own unconscious belief systems as well.
Well, you're creating your own reality tunnel. That doesn't mean you're creating reality. Out of reality, whatever that is, out of the infinite flux of energy, you're creating your own reality tunnel, and most people aren't aware of it.
All matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. That we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
What if you woke up one day and discovered that everything you've always taken for granted is not what it seems at all? What you thought was reality is actually a simulation, a very complex, sophisticated illusion that you live inside of. Even solid matter itself is no more real than, say, a rock that you would pick up in a dream. And not only are you living in a simulation, but it's being generated by a system that you can contact with your mind and actually change the simulation itself, in effect, hacking the universe. What would you do to change the world? Well, recent scientific discoveries are strongly suggesting that this is the case, that we live inside a simulation, and that we, as observers, have a demonstrable power over it. We are actually participating in the creation of the reality that we live in. Well, this is the conclusion that physicists and cosmologists have been coming to. And although this idea would have been ridiculed in the recent past, it is now being taken very seriously. Cutting-edge physics experiments have been producing some very strange results. Results that say our universe isn't an objective reality, but that it's actually emerging from something else. Something non-physical and beyond our senses. In the digital age, science is beginning to see a correlation between our world and the world of a virtual reality.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television.
By following this logic, you come to believe that consciousness is primary and gives rise to all physical matter and process. In other words, everything begins with consciousness, and there is a mind behind what we experience as physical matter. In much the same way that when you dream, your mind is creating a physical experience for you while you sleep. As you can see, these philosophies are mutually exclusive, and are in fact opposites. Both cannot be true. Either mind gives rise to matter, or matter gives rise to mind. It's a very, very old debate, but science has finally harnessed enough power to settle it once and for all. The scientific hypothesis that our world is virtual, or dreamlike, has been explored in depth by many scientists, including Dr. Brian Whitworth. He took the two opposing views, one being materialism, that our universe is entirely physical, exists in and of itself and needs nothing outside of it to explain it, and the other being the simulation hypothesis, that our universe exists as a virtual construct and depends on information processing happening outside of space-time. Dr. Whitworth looked at all the facts that have been gathered from experimental results and asked which view better fits these facts. After a thorough analysis, his conclusion was that the data much better fits the simulation hypothesis.
Right now, we're inside a computer program?
Scientifically, our universe simply makes more sense when viewed as a virtual construct emerging from consciousness, rather than simply matter existing independently of the mind.
This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real?
The analysis starts at the beginning, with the Big Bang. This well-established cosmological model demonstrates that space-time was created by a single event billions of years ago and expanded into what we see around us today. Nearly all scientists agree that our universe began to exist at one point in the distant past. From the materialist view that our universe is all there is, as an objective, independent reality, the fact that the Big Bang came from nothing is very hard to explain. How could everything come from nothing? But if you look at the universe as a virtual construct, the Big Bang model works perfectly. Virtual worlds always begin with an information influx from a zero state, since they need to initially boot up. Every time a computer game starts up, a Big Bang occurs from the perspective of the game. From inside the virtual world itself, the creation always comes from nothing, because before it boots up, there is no space or time as defined by the rules of that virtual world. Another thing to consider is quantum bits. The fact that light is quantized as photons, electricity as electrons, etc. better fits the hypothesis that we live in a virtual construct. Because in digital processing, all data must have a minimal quantity, represented by bits or pixels, and our world displays the same property. Every computer-generated image breaks down into pixels when examined closely, and this is what science has found in nature. In the past century, physicists have discovered that matter really is quantized, composed of fundamental, indivisible particles billions of times smaller than an atom. And, as science has discovered more and more about the way the universe behaves, it has become clear that nature is a matrix of computable bits. Space is quantized, time is quantized, energy is quantized. Everything is made of individual bits, which means the universe has a finite number of components, which means it has a finite number of states, which means it's computable. If the true nature of the universe is indeed digital, that we do in fact have quantum bits of space and time, and that there's nothing that you cannot compute, and at the moment there is no evidence against this, then it's entirely consistent with the simulation hypothesis. Okay, for the sake of argument, let's say the data does fit the simulation hypothesis better than it fits materialism. That's all well and good. But is there any solid evidence of computer programming in nature? It seems there is. Theoretical physicist James Gates has actually found computer code hidden deeply in the equations that describe supersymmetry.
So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos?
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
It's not just sort of resembles computer code, you're saying it is computer code.
It's not even just is computer code, it's a special kind of computer code that was invented by a scientist named Claude Shannon in the 1940s.
So are you saying we are all just, there's some entity that programmed the universe and we're just expressions of their code?
Consider the fact of a maximum speed in nature, the speed of light. In 2011, scientists reported neutrinos traveling faster than the speed of light, but those findings were retracted when it was discovered that equipment used in the experiment was faulty. Nothing has ever been seen to travel faster than the speed of light. Nature has a maximum speed, And events in a virtual world would also obey a maximum speed since they would be limited by a finite processor. There's also the curving of space by massive objects and time dilation at very high speeds. Both phenomena correlate to virtual processing load effects. High matter concentrations in our universe may constitute a high processing demand, such that massive objects would slow down the information processing of space-time, similar to the way that high data demands in a computer will slow down the processing speed. Every digital symbol created by the same program is identical to every other in the same class. In computing terms, objects are simply instances of a general class. The fact that all quantum objects are identical in each class, photon, electron, etc., correlates to a digital equivalent, since in a virtual world, every digital object created by the same code is identical. While the objects we see in our world have individual properties, the quantum bits that they are built from are all pressed from identical molds. The simulation hypothesis suggests that this is the case because each bit is created by the same program. Taken together, all of this might constitute what the courts refer to as sufficient weight of evidence, favoring idealism in the simulation hypothesis over materialism. When coincidences continue to pile up and combine with explanatory power, it presents a very strong plausibility argument, or even a proof. But even more convincing evidence is provided by cases that the simulation hypothesis can easily explain, but which materialist models have tremendous difficulty with. One such case is non-locality. For materialism to be true, and the world to exist independently of mind, the concept of locality is necessary. This means that for objects to interact, they must be in close proximity. This bright young chap is Niels Bohr. He grew up in Copenhagen, Denmark, and received his PhD by age 26. He studied Einstein's paper proving the existence of atoms, and in 1913 he introduced a conceptual model for the workings of the atom, and it's still the one taught today. A positively charged nucleus is orbited by negatively charged electrons, and these electron orbits have very specific energy levels that are quantized. Bohr's atomic model had enormous impact on atomic physics and chemistry, paving the way for the modern era. He was given a nice position at the University of Copenhagen as a physics professor. Well, it's the 1920s and every young boy wants to be Charlie Chaplin. This one wanted to be a scientist. His name is Werner Heisenberg. You may be familiar with his famous uncertainty principle, which sets hard limits on empirical inquiry. In 1925, he introduced a concept known as matrix mechanics in an attempt to explain how energy is absorbed by atoms. He did this by describing atoms not as actual physical objects, but as mathematical matrices that evolve over time. Matrix mechanics was very radical stuff, and it didn't look like traditional physics at all. Niels Bohr accepted Heisenberg's ideas as valid. But most other physicists, including Einstein, thought of them as something of a fad that would fade away once a better theory was found. Heisenberg became a professor himself and started to spread his own ideas. This is Erwin Schrödinger. In 1926, he was teaching physics at the University of Zurich, where Einstein had gotten his PhD. He wrote a paper introducing wave mechanics as an alternative to Heisenberg's matrix mechanics. It was Schrödinger who first claimed that two particles could be entangled and that they would behave as one system, as one thing, mind you, even if they were separated in space. This meant that any interaction with, observation, or measurement of one of the entangled particles would cause an instantaneous effect in the other, even at great distances across space, up to and including infinite distance in space. This is what is known as non-locality. For the majority of physicists, who were, after all, completely invested in a materialist view of the universe, this was truly unacceptable, and simply could not be true, even if all the equations worked. They just needed to put their heads together and figure out what was really going on with this newfangled wave and matrix mechanics. Einstein took particular interest in this problem because it was he who had let the genie out of the bottle with his photon and the quantum theory of light. Then, in 1964, the Irish physicist John Bell proposed his famous theorem. It's a very clever mathematically based way of experimentally testing and proving one way or the other who was right. Doing the experiment would require some very special hardware. It took 18 years for this technology to become available, and in 1982 the physicist Alan Aspect put it all together and ran the experiment. The results confirmed that non-locality was actually real. What Schrödinger had called entanglement, and was defended by Bohr but ridiculed by Einstein, was a fundamental property of nature. Instant correspondence can be seen between two particles that are separated by unlimited distance in space, and this only makes sense if the world is a virtual construct. In a virtual world, distance doesn't limit correspondence, since all points in a simulation are equidistant with respect to the source of the simulation. For example, in a computer game, all points on the screen are at equal distance with respect to the processor, and the same effect can be seen in our world. If our universe is a simulation projected onto a three-dimensional screen, then its processor would be equidistant to all points in the universe. Non-locality, one of the biggest problems in physics, is easily solved by the simulation hypothesis. Space seems to be an illusion created by the virtual construct. But even stranger than space being an illusion is what quantum physics tells us about matter itself.
The server that's creating you is not in your reality frame. It's outside. If you're Sims, that computer is non-physical to you. What's physical to you is your Sims world.
Prior to observation, matter does not seem to exist. Matter seems to be the result of an interaction between consciousness and waves of potential. This has been demonstrated repeatedly in ever more precise versions of the double-slit experiment, from the 1920s right up through the present.
It somehow seems to have been aware of there being two slits, not one, because it's given rise to this interference pattern. How does one atom do that? Does it split in half? Does it become like a cloud that goes through both?
The path taken by the photon is not an element of reality. We are not allowed to talk about the photon passing through this or this slit. Neither are we allowed to say that the photons pass through both slits. All this kind of language is not applicable.
Consciousness is information. It's an information field. Okay? It's data.
In 1978, physicist John Wheeler proposed a new way of doing the double-slit experiment that might finally reveal what's really happening. He proposed what is called the delayed choice experiment, in which the decision of whether or not to observe the particles isn't made until after they've gone through the slits, but before they've impacted the detector. This animation is highly simplified, but you get the idea. Here comes the light. It travels through the double-slit barrier as waves. The waves are past the slits but haven't yet hit the detector. And here comes the scientist. His eyes are closed. He's delaying his choice to make this an observed experiment. And then... The results of the experiment didn't solve the mystery. Instead, it got even stranger. Because what was found was that at the moment of decision to observe, the waves became particles. And not only that, but they actually made a record of themselves as having traveled through the slits as particles. Yes, you heard me. Deciding to run the observed experiment causes the waves to become particles, and this causal force extends backwards in time.
Our choice of what experiment to do determines the prior state of the electron.
Running the experiment unobserved does not cause this effect. John Wheeler first proposed adding the delayed choice protocol to the double slit experiment. He asked us to imagine a distant star that emits a photon billions of years ago and sends it towards the Earth. However, on the way, it must pass a dense galaxy. Gravitational lensing will make the light bend around the galaxy. Billions of years later, upon reaching the Earth, an astronomer chooses to use a binocular-type detector and focuses half of it on the left side of the galaxy and half of it on the right side. How the astronomer chooses to measure means the photon could only have taken one path and would display a clump pattern. So how we choose to observe in the present determines how the photon behaved billions of years ago. What John Wheeler had predicted was confirmed by the experiment. This doesn't make sense in the materialist worldview. It only makes sense if the universe is a simulation and all parts are equidistant in space-time with respect to the source of the simulation, like in a video game or a dream.
O tema do filme que você está para ver revela um segredo crucial em sua vida. Você deve vê-lo atentamente, pois se refere a um tema que poderá provocar alterações fundamentais em sua visão do mundo material. O conteúdo desse filme não é apenas uma visão diferente ou um pensamento filosófico. Na realidade, são fatos comprovados pela ciência. O homem é condicionado desde seu nascimento a pensar que o mundo em que vive é uma realidade absolutamente material. Assim, ele cresce sob o efeito deste condicionamento e constrói toda a sua vida baseado neste ponto de vista. As descobertas da ciência moderna, entretanto, revelaram a completa diferença entre a realidade significativa e o que é presumido. Toda a informação que recebemos de nosso mundo exterior nos é transmitida por nossos 5 sentidos. O mundo que conhecemos consiste do que nossos olhos veem, nossos ouvidos ouvem, nossos narizes cheiram, nossa língua saboreia e nossas mãos sentem. O homem depende desde o nascimento destes 5 sentidos. Assim, ele conhece o mundo exterior apenas da forma com que é apresentado por estes 5 sentidos. Atualmente, pesquisas científicas sobre os nossos sentidos revelaram fatos bem diferentes daquilo que denominamos de mundo externo. E estes fatos trouxeram à luz um importante segredo sobre a matéria de que é feito o mundo externo. Um pensador contemporâneo, Frederick West, assinala as declarações de alguns cientistas, afirmando que o homem é uma imagem, toda experiência é temporária e ilusória, e este universo é uma sombra. Parecem estar sendo comprovadas pela ciência em nossos dias. Para melhor captar este segredo por trás da matéria, devemos nos relembrar de como captamos as informações da realidade que nos provê com a mais extensa informação do nosso mundo exterior. Desta forma, o cérebro, durante nossa vida, jamais se confronta com a fonte original da matéria existente fora de nós, mas apenas com uma cópia elétrica da mesma, formada dentro de nosso cérebro. Neste ponto, somos iludidos a pensar que essas cópias são instâncias da realidade material fora de nós. O mundo exterior em nosso cérebro. Estes fatos físicos nos fazem chegar a uma indiscutível conclusão. Tudo aquilo que vemos, ouvimos, tocamos e sentimos como matéria, o mundo e mesmo o universo são realmente apenas sinais elétricos em nosso cérebro. Outro ponto a ser considerado é a sensação de distância. Por exemplo, a distância entre você e a tela é apenas uma sensação de espaço formada em seu cérebro. Também, objetos que parecem estar muito distantes na visão de um indivíduo são, na realidade, imagens plasmadas em um ponto dentro do cérebro. Por exemplo, alguém que observe as estrelas assume que elas estão a milhões de anos-luz distante dele. Na realidade, as estrelas estão dentro dele. É a visão em seu cérebro. Enquanto você vê este filme, você assume que está em um ambiente, mas na realidade, o ambiente está em você. Você vendo seu corpo o faz pensar que está dentro dele. Entretanto, você deve observar que seu corpo também é uma imagem formada em seu cérebro. Até agora, falamos de um mundo exterior, de um mundo de percepções formados em nosso cérebro, do que nós vemos. Entretanto, como nunca podemos alcançar o mundo externo, como podemos estar certos de que este mundo externo realmente existe? Definitivamente não podemos. A única realidade com que lidamos é o mundo de sensações nas quais vivemos em nossa mente. Nós acreditamos na existência de objetos somente porque os vemos e tocamos, e eles são refletidos para nós por nossas percepções. Entretanto, nossas percepções são somente ideias em nossa mente. Assim, objetos que captamos por percepções não são nada além de ideias, e estas ideias existem apenas em nossa mente. E se tudo isto existe apenas em nossa mente, isto significa que nós somos iludidos por enganos, quando imaginamos um universo e objetos com existência fora de nossas mentes. Imaginar a matéria como tendo uma existência fora de nossa mente é, na realidade, um engano. As sensações que observamos podem estar vindo de uma fonte artificial. É possível ver isto com um exemplo. Primeiro, vamos supor que podemos retirar o cérebro de nosso corpo e mantê-lo vivo em uma caixa de vidro. Vamos adicionar um computador com toda sorte de informações e, finalmente, vamos enviar todos os sinais elétricos, dados que temos de luz, som, sabor, tato e olfato para este computador. Vamos conectar então este computador aos sensores de sentidos de nosso cérebro com conectores e vamos enviar-lhe os dados previamente gravados nesse computador. Quando nosso cérebro perceber estes sinais, ele vai ver, sentir e viver as cenas que lhe apresentamos. Deste computador, também podemos enviar sinais elétricos referentes a imagens e cenas criadas. Por exemplo, podemos mandar sinais referentes ao que percebemos e sentimos enquanto estamos sentados em nossa mesa de trabalho. Neste estágio, o cérebro pensará que é um homem de negócios sentado em seu escritório. Este mundo imaginário continuará enquanto a estimulação vinda do computador persistir. É de fato muito simples para nós sermos enganados acreditando que percepções sem qualquer causa material sejam reais. Isto é precisamente o que ocorre em nossos sonhos. Para você, realidade é tudo aquilo que pode ser tocado com as mãos e visto com os olhos. E nos sonhos também podemos tocar com as mãos e ver com os olhos. Mas na realidade, você não tem mãos e tampouco olhos, e tampouco existe algo que possa ser tocado ou visto. Tomando o que você percebe no sonho pela realidade material, você está preparado para ser enganado. Por exemplo, uma pessoa profundamente adormecida em sua cama pode ver a si mesma em um mundo totalmente diferente em seu sonho. Ela poderá sonhar que é um piloto que comanda um grande jato. E mesmo pode despender muito esforço para comandar o avião. De fato, esta pessoa não se afastou um único passo de sua cama. Em seus sonhos, ela pode viver em diferentes cenários e se encontrar com amigos, conversar com eles, comer e beber em conjunto. Somente quando a pessoa desperta de seu sonho é que ela se dá conta que tudo foram apenas percepções. Se somos capazes de viver facilmente em um mundo irreal durante nossos sonhos, o mesmo pode ser também verdadeiro para o mundo no qual vivemos. Quando despertamos de um sonho, não há razão lógica para não pensar que entramos em um sonho mais longo, que denominamos de vida real. A razão pela qual consideramos nossos sonhos como fantasia e o mundo como real nada mais é do que o produto de nossos hábitos e preconceitos. Isto sugere que podemos também ser despertados de uma vida na Terra, que acreditamos estar vivendo neste momento exatamente da mesma maneira que somos despertados de um sonho. Após todos esses fatos físicos, levanta-se a pergunta primordial. Se todos os eventos físicos que conhecemos são essencialmente percepções, o que é nosso cérebro? Já que nosso cérebro é matéria, como nosso braço, perna ou qualquer outro objeto, ele também deve ser uma percepção como todos os outros objetos. Um exemplo vai clarear mais este assunto. Vamos imaginar que estendemos os nervos que atingem nosso cérebro e o colocamos fora de nossa cabeça, onde podemos ver com nossos olhos. Neste caso, seríamos capazes de ver nosso cérebro e tocá-lo com os dedos. Podemos perceber que o cérebro nada mais é do que uma percepção formada pela sensação da visão e do tato. Então, qual é a vontade que vê, ouve, sente e percebe todos os outros sentidos, senão o cérebro? Quem vê, ouve, toca e percebe o sabor e o aroma? Quem é este ser que pensa, raciocina, tem sensações e mais, diz eu e mim? Um dos importantes pensadores de nossa época, Karl Pribram, também coloca a mesma pergunta. Desde os gregos, os filósofos pensam sobre os espíritos na máquina, o pequeno homem dentro do pequeno homem. Onde está o eu, a pessoa que usa o cérebro? Quem é que se dá conta da ação do conhecimento? São Francisco de Assis dizia: procuramos aquele que vê. Na realidade, o ser metafísico que usa o cérebro, que vê e sente, é a alma, o espírito. O que denominamos de mundo material é o agregado de percepções vistas e sentidas pela alma. Assim como os corpos que possuímos e o mundo material que vemos em nossos sonhos não possuem uma realidade física, o universo que ocupamos e os corpos que possuímos tampouco têm realidade material. Mesmo se iniciamos com ferrenha oposição, afirmando que matéria é real, as leis da física, química e biologia nos levam todas ao fato de que a matéria consiste em uma ilusão e a inevitável atualidade do conceito de uma matéria metafísica. Este é o segredo por trás da matéria. Este fato é tão definitivo que alarma alguns cientistas materialistas que pensam ser a matéria o absoluto. O escritor científico Lincoln Barnett diz no seu livro O Universo e Einstein que, em concordância com a afirmação dos filósofos de redução de toda a realidade objetiva a um mundo paralelo de percepções, os cientistas começaram a se conscientizar da alarmante limitação dos sentidos humanos. Todos esses fatos nos conduzem a uma importante e significativa pergunta: se as coisas que aceitamos ser o mundo material são na realidade formadas por percepções transmitidas à nossa alma, então qual a fonte destas percepções? Respondendo a esta pergunta, devemos considerar o fato de que a matéria não tem apenas uma existência autônoma, porém é uma percepção. Assim, esta percepção deve ter sido causada por algum outro poder, o que significa que tem que ter sido criada. Mais ainda, esta criação tem que ser contínua. Se não fosse uma criação contínua e consistente, então o que nós denominamos matéria desapareceria e seria perdida. Isto pode ser parecido a uma televisão, onde uma imagem é mostrada enquanto o sinal da antena é mantido contínuo. Se a transmissão interrompe, a imagem na tela também desaparece. O ser real e absoluto é a alma. A matéria consiste meramente de percepções vistas pela alma.